gotta go share.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Today we're going to do something a little different, and then next week as well. We're going to go through a case study. If anyone is viewing online, I posted it this morning in the Facebook group, and there are a couple extra handouts at that table. Karen, if you wanted to grab one, they're right there too. So I will read it out loud, and then we can chat through it.
Is it loud enough? Can you guys hear?
Brandon, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So the case study is called Sophie. It starts with, I really love my job. The company I work for is a small family-owned business, and they place a high priority on work-life balance and a healthy work culture. They invest a lot in their employees and seek to make the work culture as much of a work family as possible. I've worked here for several years, but as a Christian, I struggle with things I encounter at work. This year, our Christmas party is now the holiday party, because calling it a Christmas party is not inclusive of our Jewish and Hindu employees. While I understand and wasn't too upset by the change, there is now a swear jar for anyone who calls it the Christmas party. I'm uncomfortable with the idea that Christmas is being batted around as a swear word now. Even though there's levity in it, there's also a measure of sincerity. The other issue I'm routinely encountering is how to work alongside LGBTQ plus colleagues. There are a few gay men on my team, a few more on another team I work with, and one woman who claims to be non-binary and insists on they-them pronouns. You'd think that just going to work and doing my job would not force me into awkward moral dilemmas working alongside these teammates, but it does. I try to use Tara's name instead of her pronouns so I can just avoid the issue altogether, but I've slipped and said her instead of them and was publicly called out on it. I just ignored the rebuke and restated my comment using her name instead. Thankfully, no one took it further this time, but most people have their pronouns listed in their names on Zoom, and I and a few others do not. Pronouns are a big deal, and my lack of pronouns on the screen singles me out. I also have a colleague whose husband decided that he's really a woman and has had all of the operations to evidence that claim. He changed his name to Jessica, and the woman I work with now talks about her wife regularly, more than anyone else shares about their spouse, in fact. Again, not only do I have to use Jessica so I can avoid the pronoun game, but I know that they were cast out of their church when he made this decision, and so they feel a sense of antagonism towards Christianity. I wouldn't say that my colleague really had faith or belief. She went to church because her husband did. So I feel more responsible for demonstrating a caring and kind attitude toward her, especially given that we've developed a certain level of friendship and mutual respect working together. But how do I do this without accepting and condoning her husband's choices? At the company picnic, I found myself in a volleyball game right alongside Jessica. I wanted to be kind and welcoming, but also struggled with the fact that all appearances aside, he's not a woman, and I don't want my behavior to suggest that I'm embracing that fantasy along with him. Then it became even more challenging. During a family crisis, 3 of my teammates sent me a generous gift card to Uber Eats with the note that they hoped it would help reduce my burden and stress during a challenging time. It was incredibly kind, and I was touched by their generosity. 2 of these colleagues were the gay men on my team. A few months later, one of them married his boyfriend. I have typically coordinated team gifts and celebrations to send gifts to teammates who were having babies, getting married, etc. I let this teammate's marriage go by without carrying out my usual role to honor their life event. I felt uncomfortable either way. In good conscience, I couldn't celebrate their marriage. I am a Christian who believes that marriage is between a man and a woman as God designed. But I also felt like my obvious absence was not only condemnation of their marriage, but an extra slap in the face when the teammate had been so kind and generous to me just months before by extending a helping hand. How does my silence convey Christian love? Can I really celebrate their marriage? So, we've got a lot here. I think it would be good to start with what does Sophie seem to believe is real and true, right and wrong, or good and beautiful? What are her thoughts?
Some points of Christian
Hold on.
Sorry. From what the statement that was read, that she has a Christian worldview.
Yeah, I think so. Sure, at least she's trying to. She seems a little conflicted. No. Anyone else have anything to add with that? She seems like she's having trouble with work, right? So what about her workplace? If she came to you with this problem and said, hey, I've got all this stuff going on at work, I've got these coworkers, I've got this Christmas thing, but they're saying I can't say Christmas anymore, what advice would you give to Sophie? And maybe what would be your order of priority for, hey, how do you handle this most effectively? I think I would start with the Christmas thing. That's the most pressing and immediate issue for her, right? That's something that maybe you need to go talk to your human resources team about. You're saying, hey, we're an inclusive work culture, but saying Christmas is, I got to put $1 in the swear jar if I say Christmas. That doesn't seem very inclusive to me. So you can handle something like that right away. That's, you said we changed it to the holiday party because we want to be inclusive of our Jewish and Hindu colleagues. But now I'm being excluded for my belief in, Christianity and Christmas. I think the other thing maybe would be the pronoun issues. She seems to be making a really big deal about the pronoun thing, about it being in people's... Does everyone know what Zoom is? Raise your hand if you don't know what Zoom is. I just want to make sure. So she's saying everyone's got it in their bios. And then their names, it might say, Brittany and she, her, on the screen when you look at the name. She did say several other people don't include their pronouns. So she seems to think she's, being singled out, but is she really? Or is that just her perception that needs to be addressed with her? And how would you address that with her? It seems to me, from reading this, and it doesn't say that Sophie might be maybe a little spiritually immature, but also maybe age-wise a little young. She hasn't really found her footing or her own identity yet to get comfortable in her own skin to stand up for herself. Does anyone have anything they want to add on that? Catherine?
I can say in my work area, I work with people who were gay and who were lesbian and the Christmas parties. I got to know people one-on-one, and they knew my lifestyle. We talk one-on-one that I'm a Christian, that's something I don't participate in, so that when those events came up, they didn't include me. They understood that I have faith in my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ, and I don't participate. So if I'm offered, they understand my no meant no, and it wasn't harsh. I didn't feel left out. I felt appreciated and respected for my beliefs.
I think that's a really good point, because you had those conversations and people knew you were a Christian. Maybe from reading this, the question to ask Sophie, if she's coming to you for advice, is, have you been living at work as a closeted Christian that nobody knows that, this would even affect you? Fred, did you have something you were going to add? Brenda, Fred.
To a point that she has taken stands, she's compromised as far as with certain pronouns and things, but yet she's still she has guilt feelings about the situation, and again, it just sounds like she's in an area of decision whether to stay or to go.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. What advice would you give her with regard to coordinating the gift for the gay coworker who married the boyfriend? She's saying they were really nice to me. They gave me an Uber Eats gift card after I'd had a challenging time, and now I feel bad that I didn't return the favor to them when they got married. How would you handle that? Go ahead, Fred.
It's a situation, again, that I've at least heard about, that a celebrity that we grew up with came into that situation and she compromised.
Mm-hmm.
And then others, again, whether their profession makes them encounter individuals, they've been sued more often in the, what you would say, in the bakery profession, that they've been sued and taken to court because of saying no, that they weren't going to provide the service for them.
Yeah, and here Sophie didn't do anything for this coworker, so she feels like it's more obvious that, this is normally something she coordinates and she didn't. Maybe something to recommend to her is to stop doing that. Don't coordinate those gifts anymore. Or the companies I've worked at in the past have had a cohort, like a group of people that handle that stuff, and you recuse yourself from that situation. If other people want to do what they're going to do, they're going to do it, but you don't have to participate in that. What is good and commendable about Sophie's beliefs and her values? She seems like she's trying to search for the right way to handle this, right? Yeah. I think some of the advice for Sophie could be for her to find a more mature Christian and get a little mentorship going on. Find somebody that she can talk to about this stuff. In the case study here, the theory is that she's coming to us with these questions and we're giving her advice, but she does seem a little spiritually immature. So find somebody that you can talk to. Go to your pastor. Find another Christian, older but more mature Christian that you can ask these things. Is there something missing or broken in Sophie's worldview? I think she's struggling, right? So she's not too sure what the Christian response should be to something like this.
I think it's also hard because in the beginning she mentioned that it's a great place to work, right? Other than these kind of issues popping up, it's, she has no complaints about it. So it seems like, it can be hard to make that decision of, what's the next step for me if I do in a way feel safe and comfortable here. But, it's kind of going morally. It's like it's not giving her what she needs, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, maybe at some point a decision does need to be made. Do I stay or do I go? And how do you handle that then? It would be an interesting exit interview if they conducted one. Catherine?
I want to go back to the gifts.
Yeah,
not
sure.
giving a gift. When you give a gift to an individual who is a sinner, it's not that you're condoning what they're doing. You're showing them love. That could be that olive branch that opens up and they think, okay, if I take this gift, maybe I can focus on this person's life. Maybe I will decide to go to church with this person. I can, that would be a conversation opened up about, okay, who do you serve? And can we talk about, your beliefs? So giving the gift is not saying I am accepting your lifestyle. It could be love, opening up for another opportunity for this person to give their life to Christ.
Do you think, though, that because the gift would be for the marriage that, as Christians, we would say is not truly a marriage, that would change your viewpoint because the gift would be in celebration of that marriage? Does that change anything?
That part does.
Yeah, because I think, gosh, if the guy's, mom passed away or something,
Right.
get the guy an Uber Eats gift card. What does his, choices have to do with that? That's a person who's hurting and needs, support and care there, right? So I do agree to an extent. It's like you don't ice the person out.
Right.
Anyone else anything to add on the topic of Sophie?
When my daughter got married, I knew that she was marrying someone who was not a Christian. And and it really bothered me. At the time, I thought she was a Christian, but apparently she's floated away. But when I was praying one day, I said, God, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to, what to expect here, or, do I tell her what I think, or do I not tell her? I'm sure she already knows. But I heard God say, be joyful and celebrate. And I think, I like what Catherine said about, giving a gift because they're celebrating something and you want them to know you're thinking of them. I don't know that I agree with not giving something to them.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think, with your daughters, unfortunately, she's drifted off from the faith. You have the possibility there that this is a man and a woman, that relationship and marriage could be redeemed by both coming to faith in Christ, right? A marriage between two men or two women, they're outside of which one is not a recognized marriage, but there's no redemption there with them together in that way.
Yeah, and I think two things can be true at the same time, right? You can love that person, but also the fact that you don't agree with their lifestyle, right? Yeah.
Yeah. And that gets to what we've talked about many times is, the definition of what is love, what is tolerance, and the way that that's been co-opted by our culture to say, well, love and tolerance mean 100% affirmation in what I'm doing. Well, no, it doesn't. We're to speak truth and we're to do so with love, but we're not to lie to anybody about what their behavior is. You wouldn't say somebody who has an addiction is like, go ahead, pour yourself another drink. That's that's a great thing for you. That's not how we want to behave. We want to say, hey, that's not how we're supposed to be living our lives. That's not what the Bible calls us to. Anything else on Sophie?
I'm retired, and a couple weeks ago I went to Christmas party from work. And one of the ladies that I talked to is a lesbian, and they, her and her partner had adopted a child right before I left work. And so I went up to her and I said, I can't remember how I worded it, but I said, how is your little one?
Yeah.
And she said, oh, they're in school now. And of course, because I'm in my 70s, I said, they? And she said, I don't know how she worded it. She showed me a picture of the little girl. And I thought, because I'm thinking, oh, she adopted another child and,
multiples are in school.
So this whole thing with the they and he and she and them, and to me is totally confusing. I don't understand, and for her to be saying they for a 7-year-old girl,
Right.
I don't know. And then I thought afterwards, I said, oh, she's beautiful, and I thought, no, I probably shouldn't have said she. It's very confusing to me.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think one of the things, as it relates to like Sophie here, is she's getting really hung up on the pronoun game. And generally, if you're talking directly to somebody, you're not going to use pronouns to have a direct conversation with that person. It's more so when you're dealing with, that person's not around and you're referencing that person. But so I think Sophie does a good job here of using the name rather than the pronouns. And, if she wanted to, like we talked earlier, is she living as a closeted Christian? Like, that this person who now goes by the name of Jessica is really a man. You could choose to use he, him, because those are his actual pronouns. Like, he is a man. Or putting the pronouns in your name on the Zoom screen. I work and I've talked about this before, at a very progressive organization where lots of people have their pronouns in their email signatures. I don't. They gave me the template when I started, and it listed all of your options, and I just deleted that and moved the line up. I'm not going to include that. If you can't figure out that I have longer hair, my name is Brittany, that I'm a girl, I don't know how else to help you there. There's to an extent that, maybe you understand if someone's got a name that's not as easily recognizable. Jamie could be, go either way. I work with a lot of people that are based out of India, so they're, just the naming conventions there are different. It's not easily recognizable, but I still just use that person's name. I don't, hey, whatever their name is, hey, name, not, anything else, or if I'm having to reference that person, I'm referencing their name. So I think there's ways for Sophie to handle this situation that wouldn't cause her nearly as much anxiety as it seems to be causing her. Anyone else? No, if not, I was going to do another one of these next week. Is there interest in doing another case study? Otherwise, we can do the one for next week will be, Sophie's actually, seems to be a believer here. The other one will be a non-believer coming to you. So the way that one's written, the person tends to be a little more confrontational towards you as the reader or listener. And it's an interesting one of how do you handle that then? Of, let's say this person's sitting across from you at the coffee shop and says, you Christians and your, beliefs are harmful, and how do you respond to that? So with that, I hope everyone has a Merry Christmas. Thank you for coming, and we'll see you next week. Finish. Thanks, Brenda.
It's not letting me. It's not letting me stop.